All right, so I'm going to introduce our speakers here for this session. We are, if you're in this room, you are listening to Michigan Prairie Strips about the research and farmer implementation of these native prairie fixtures on farm fields. With us today, we've got Dr. Liz Schultheis from the Michigan State University and Dr. Kathryn Docherty from the Western Michigan University. With them are three farmers who have been implementing their program, Kyle Mitchell, Mike Zenk, and Mike Bronkema. And join me in welcoming them.
Hi, welcome everybody. All right, so my name is Liz. I'm from Michigan State University. We have two scientists here with us and three farmers, so our goal is to be quick with the scientists and get to the farmer part. And so first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce prairie strips to everybody. Who has heard of prairie strips before? Okay, so not many people. And then, does anyone have prairie strips in the audience? Nobody. Perfect. This is the perfect audience. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I'm not a farmer, I'm a scientist, and so my job is to listen to farmers and also be a liaison between the people who are actually doing the work in agriculture and the scientists who are here to help answer questions for you. So if there is something that you want to know that is served by science, like Rick talking about, getting a baseline for your farm before you start a conservation practice or getting some data to show that a conservation practice is working, that's the kind of thing that scientists can help with. And what we've heard from farmers again and again, listening to them, is that, of course, the first thing is your farm is a business, you want to be profitable, but then all the farmers we talk about are interested in conservation and also things like reducing inputs to save money, but also because they know it's good for the environment. So you're trying to make money, you want to reduce inputs, you want to improve the soil health of your farm, you want to protect clean water, many more things. And we are really excited about this new conservation practice called prairie strips. And this is the practice of strategically putting native prairie plantings into agricultural land. And so they can look like this. This is, I sometimes say, like a strippy strip or a non-strippy strip. They can look like a straight line down the center of your farm. This is how the practice has started. Or they could look like something that's in sort of a more marginal area of your farm, an area where the tractor is turning around, or a wet area that you never can plant and never get yield out of. And so you can think strategically about placing these prairie plantings throughout your farm. The practice began in Iowa with the STRIPS program. And they did a lot of experiments where they took these Iowa cornfields. One of the big challenges in Iowa is water quality and a lot of slope on the fields. And so what they did is they put prairie strips in as strips to catch a lot of the runoff of soil and nutrients that are being lost from farms. And the prairie could potentially stop the movement of the loss of the soil, the loss of the nutrients. And so you can see these are little like sloughs or something that they put at the end of where the water comes out of the farm field. And you can see that if it's left as 100% crop corn, the farm is losing a ton of its soil, a ton of its nutrients. Of course, 100% prairie can't necessarily do that, but the water's coming out crystal clear. And then they found that this 10% prairie is kind of a magic number to get a lot of benefits out of it. So if you can identify about 10% of your fields to catch a lot of this stuff, you're going to get a lot of benefits. And so there's a ton of research on prairie strips. If you want to read scientific papers, it's limitless at this point. But they've seen some pretty miraculous things. So 37% reduction in water runoff, 95% reduction in sediment just from this 10%. There's also more pollinators, more birds. They're not seeing more weeds. They're seeing a lot less nutrient loss. So that's in Iowa. We are in Michigan. And so what we're going to talk about today is our MiSTRIPS program, which is the Michigan spinoff of that program. And I work at a field station, which is very experimental. It's in Hickory Corners, Michigan, kind of between Kalamazoo and Battle Creek. We have a lot of long-term experiments We do have a 30-year no-till experiment. I almost raised my hand to say I did no-till for 30 years, but that's a total lie because I've only worked there for a couple years. But we are looking at prairie strips in this really experimental setting, but then we also want to look to see what does it look like on a real farm. We don't want to just do it in this one spot. We want to put it on farms, talk to farmers about their experiences, and so we're really thankful to be joined by farmers who are actually trying this out and listening to their testimonials about it.
All right. Thank you, Liz. And thanks everybody for being here, and to Sarah for organizing and inviting us. We really appreciate it. My name's Kathryn Docherty. I'm a professor at Western Michigan University, and I'm not going to talk very long because we want to hear from our wonderful farmers. But what I study is a lot of the things that Mr. Clark was just talking about, that is that biological black box that's in the soil. So what are those microbes doing, and what is healthy soil, and how do we make it happen? So basically, soil health is a combination of physical, chemical, and biological properties. There are lots of definitions of soil health, and Rick just did a great job of explaining a lot of the principles of soil health, one of which is minimizing disturbance, another of which is making sure there are live roots in the soil. And there are lots of definitions, but basically, those are some of the fundamental principles. One of the big things that we think about in terms of trying to promote soil health in prairie strips is how deep do those roots go, and what types of biological, especially microbiological factors, are being supported by native plants that might be in a prairie strip. So I'm going to do a little demo and hope that we don't fall off the stage. So Liz, you're going to hold the box? Okay, great. So our first demo is to talk about the depth of some of our common plants that we plant in our agricultural system. So we'll start with corn. Would you like to pull the string for corn, Rick? So this is the depth of the root of, corn, which fell off. It's fine. It's very short, right? A really small root structure. It can go a little deeper than that, but usually it's not much deeper, right? So let's talk a little bit about then some of these native plants that might exist in a prairie strip. So why don't we just do it? We could just do it across the stage too. That's fine. Yeah. Or we have a volunteer. Okay. So one of our most common native plants in Michigan is this purple coneflower. Purple coneflower is a beautiful flower that is often in bouquets. So what is the length of that root? All right, yeah, it's pretty deep. It's about 6 feet deep, so it's actually deeper than. Okay, we're pulling many strings now. It's much deeper than you might anticipate from what you might see above ground. So they usually grow about this tall, and then the root structure extends about my height to into the ground. All right, then if we advance to lead plant, this is a little unauspicious shrub that is about this tall. It's got some nice purple flowers on it. It's a host plant for a variety of pollinators. And that's its root structure. So its root extends 15 or more feet into the ground. And that is a lead plant. Yeah, that's what it looks like up there. So I'll show you the root structure of some prairie plants. Thank you so much to our volunteers. So these are some of the root structures of prairie plants that are common and would normally be native Michigan plants in this area. And you can see some of these root structures. Lead plant is this first one right after Kentucky bluegrass. So Kentucky bluegrass is right here. Nope, that's not working. Kentucky bluegrass is the furthest one to the left. Root structure is about that deep, right, only a few inches, whereas lead plant is 18 feet deep. And what that's doing is causing there to be a greater amount of soil stability, lots more infiltration, so water can get deeper into the soil, and then all along those roots, there's these interactions with microbes in the soil. So that extend the root area, that store carbon, that add to that biological activity and that biological function of soil health. So what we know is that when we look across all the prairies that I've studied versus all the ag fields that I've studied, and I take an average of the organic matter that is in these prairies and ag systems in Michigan, there's about 3 to 4 more organic matter in prairies, no matter what the age of them, but especially as they age and get older. So prairies store a lot more organic matter, and as a result of that, tend to have a lot more biological activity, a lot more fertility, more nitrogen, more carbon, and are acting as these carbon sinks on farms. So as Liz mentioned, we are working with a variety of farmers, not just to work in an experimental system, but also looking at how prairie strips affect on-farm activities. So we have a project through the USDA, through the North Central SARE, which stands for Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program, to talk with farmers and implement these types of prairie strip projects onto their farms and see how they're affecting soil health long term. So right now we have a chronosequence, which is basically a fancy way of saying how many years this prairie strip has been installed, a chronosequence of different prairie strips on different farms that range from just installed in the coming spring, which are some of our farmers here, versus some prairie strips that have been in place for over 20 years. So what we're going to be able to do with this project is really say, how long does a prairie strip have to be in place to provide the maximum benefit on a farm? So more soon on that. We're only in our second year of this project, but so far we know that there's just a lot more organic matter in these prairie strips, and the longer they're in place, typically, the more benefits you see. Another thing I want to point out really quickly is that our collaborators at Kellogg Biological Station and Michigan State University have created a budget model for when it is economically feasible to put a prairie strip on your property. So that's this budget model. There's copies of it here, and there's also a website that you can find if you don't want a paper copy that's up there. But basically what this budget model shows is that you can map your field and figure out your yield maps, as you likely know, figure out where your yield is low. So this map, for example, shows in red the areas that have low yield versus in darker green the areas with high yield. And essentially what this budget model is saying is that if you have 75% or less yield, depending on the crop, it is probably more economically feasible to put a prairie strip in that area. And that takes into account things like foregone crop sales, input savings costs, versus the costs of prairie maintenance, and then also the amount of money you might be getting from a program like Conservation Reserve. So I welcome you to take one of these and take a look at this budget model and see if it might be the right fit. Liz has a lot of information, and MiSTRIPS provides information on how to install prairie strips and the types of seed mixes to use. But I'll leave it at that and then kind of turn it over to our panel at this point. So do you want me to introduce, or do you want to introduce?
No, I was going to have them introduce themselves.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks, Liz.
All right, your first hat. That's good. Okay. All right, so first we're just going to have all the panelists introduce themselves. What's really cool is we have like 3 very different types of farms represented up here, and so this is exactly one of our goals, is to see, like, is everyone having a good experience with it? Does it work for all these different scenarios? Maybe it's going to work in some cases, not in others, so this is why we're excited to hear from different farms. So yeah, just introduce yourself quickly and a little bit about your farm.
Oh, all right. Hello, my name is Kyle Mitchell. I am a 3rd-generation organic blueberry farmer. Our farm is 70 acres, but on that farm I have 23 acres of blueberries that are planted, about 22,000 plants or so. And I have a map up that shows where I'm going to be planting them out on the field, and what else you need.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Good job.
I'm Mike Zink. I have a small, really it's a hobby farm down by Buchanan, Michigan, where I grow mostly hay for horses and cattle and pigs that are pasture pigs.
Mike Bronkema, a very diversified farm. I grow small grains, corn, dry beans, and then also sheep and cows. So, you know, you talk about diversified, Rick. I understand what you're talking about.
Thanks. And Mike doesn't have a picture of his farm because we just recruited him this morning because I got him to talk about prairie strips yesterday at a different event, and when he was here, he had to get up here. So that's why he has no resources. It's my fault. Okay, so first I just want to ask basically, like, what got you first interested in prairie strips? Why did you first start to consider this practice? Did you have specific goals in mind? And what are you thinking about as you're getting started? And I guess we'll just keep going in order.
Well, I had already, with the NRCS office, I'm in Van Buren County, we had already had a 2-acre pollinator field program that is going to be implemented. And then I think it was September, we were at the Blueberry Field Day and came across the program, and the two lined up perfectly for what we planned on doing on the farm, and here we are.
You're our one blueberry person. So are there other blueberry people in the audience too?
Hey, all
Okay,
right.
a little bit of blueberry, good. So what are your specific goals for a blueberry farm with this prairie?
Main is for pollinators. Right now, I'm just utilizing the bees that my neighbors get, but I'd like to be able to have a lot more diversity on the farm. I've got some areas that are really hard to manage. Just a wet area, the tractor gets stuck. It's probably like 15 feet lower than some of the other areas. It's just a bad area. So that area is just, it allows pests to overpopulate and kind of spread through the field. So by taking the berries out in that area and putting in the prairie strip, I should be able to increase my yield. Like I said, that 75%. I mean, it hasn't been farmed, this area, the 2 acres, hasn't been farmed probably and at least picked in, I don't know, 20 years. Because it just can't get in there.
Yeah, I pulled up your map.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you need to refer to any of these. Anyway, all of you, just let me know what side you want up on.
Yeah, so this is a map of what I have planted on the field. I kind of broke it down into the green strips are obviously where I want to plant them. Those actually show kind of breaks between different varieties, as well as just kind of areas that are hard to manage that are traditionally wet.
Awesome. Okay, Mike.
Okay, if you go back a slide, I think. Yeah, that's a good one. So that's my little farm. The blue strips are where I plan to put the prairie strips. And you can see there's a tree line in there. Some 50 or 60 years ago, I assumed that the guy who owned the place had terraced that area. And so it needed another little barrier to maintain the soil. When I had soil tested and I did some other things with the Farm Service, they actually told me that this plot of land was highly erodible, even though it's been in hay for 20 years. It's not eroding very much. At any rate, the other thing that I started 2 years ago are the little green squares that you see on that map. I put in prairie strips without being part of the program, and mostly I put those in to so I wouldn't have to mow so much of my grass around the buildings. You save gas that way too. And of course it's pollinators for sure, and areas that you're not going to farm anyway, for sure.
And for Mike B., how old are your strips? And think back to when you were planting yours.
Wow, that's a long time ago. 20 years ago, I put in my first strip. I did it in combination working with NRCS. We were looking at an EQIP grant, and when you were doing that, it was competitive. I don't know where it's at today, but all these practices had to be put in place. The more practices, the more points you got. So it was like, okay, it worked for me. So 20 years ago, we actually put in wind erosion systems, which were actually those tree rows that he was talking about. And then a couple of years later, I had a young lady from MSU that was looking at pollinators. It was before it was even cool. She said, hey, I want to do a little, put one in by you. We put it in. Come to find out, mine was the only one of 3 that she put in that survived. It is still surviving today. Sorry I don't have pictures. I shared those yesterday with the other group. They are amazing yet to see the flowers still reproducing, after 20 years. They still keep working. But currently we also have, we've added in the pollinator strips. I don't know where that fits for you guys. Prairie strips, pollinator strips, they're all doing kind of the same thing. We added one in 4 years ago now. Basically, I took over an area so I didn't have to mow it. but it is just one of those areas that when you get to go back there, it's alive. It's a place where we find our beneficials, insects starting to hang out in there earlier than what we find in other areas.
All right, I was gonna ask now just some like practical things as you're getting started. So thinking about what are you doing to prep the site to get ready for putting in prairie strips? What are you preparing for like how to maintain them over time? Is anyone else helping you with like, putting the seed out and, how are you getting started with this?
Unfortunately, I inherited a lot of equipment, so I have enough tractor equipment and implements to be able to clear the land and provide a space to be able to plant them. And I know when I was talking with my local extension office with the 2-acre NRCS program, they did also mention that they have a 4-foot drill press if we needed to rent one from them that's available as well. So I don't know how that works if the extension office up here also rent out equipment, but I know in Van Buren they've at least told me I have an opportunity to get a 4-foot wide drill press from them.
Yeah, I think I will broadcast that with the broadcast seeder. If you read the literature on flower seeds, they're supposed to be planted at the depth of the width of the seed, which isn't very big. So you barely have to, drill them in. You can just put them on the soil and maybe cultipack them a little bit, but that's pretty much.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I've got enough equipment. Yes, you do a lot of tear out. The one thing that I found when I'm doing a prairie strip is the flowers that you got to go and invest in. Look over what you're actually getting there. A lot of these companies want to put everything in because that's what you're required to put in. But sometimes some of these pollinators and flowers and that kind of stuff are so naturally prevalent in your area, you really don't need to add those back in. They will fill in naturally in those areas. So, take a look at what you're actually investing in. Farmers, we're all about economy. Pay attention to what you're doing.
And also just to mention, this is kind of a good time to get started with it. You would be a little bit of our guinea pigs, because again, we're just getting started with prairie strips in Michigan, but we do have a grant right now, and so for anyone who's putting in new strips, we can buy the seed for the project, which is like one of the biggest costs. And then we can help either connect you to a farmer who's already done it and knows where to get the seed broadcaster or how to prep the site. We can help connect you to this network of farmers who are getting started with the practice to help you as well. So we're always happy to help troubleshoot.
So the MiSTRIPS seed mix is designed specifically to kind of maximize the growing season and the bloom season, essentially, of the plants to help provide the greatest pollinator benefit. So you'll get blooms from probably late April, early May, all the way until October in these mixes. We've done a lot of research on looking at how different diversities of plant mixes affect soil health. And one of the biggest things to remind yourself of is just getting these perennial roots in the ground does a lot, right? So it doesn't have to be a really highly diverse mix to do a lot for soil health. The more diverse your plant seed mix, the more pollinators you're going to benefit, though. So that is one of the big considerations. Yeah, thanks.
One of those other things you have to consider, a lot of farmers are not like Rick and I that haven't used chemicals for a lot of years. Those chemicals are really hard on those flowering plants out there. I've been blessed to not have used chemicals either for a long time, and we are seeing some of those pollinators, those flowers that are very seldom seen because they cannot stand those chemicals at all, and they're showing up in those pollinator areas because we're keeping those clean.
Kathryn, do we have any preliminary data about how long it takes for the biology to come back after, Rick, you were saying don't do one spray because you're going to remove all this stuff that you don't intend to remove. So does it take a while to come back?
So looking at a restoration versus a conventionally managed field, typically the bacterial community especially takes over 30 years, if not forever, to come back, just from that long-term exposure to tilling and fertilization, high nutrient content. The fungal community can typically come back a bit quicker just because they are more directly associated with plant roots, but especially if you're trying to get to a restoration that's similar to what might have been a tallgrass prairie or oak savanna system in this region, it takes either forever or it's permanently damaged. That said, it doesn't take too long to start to build organic matter. And you might not get to the maximum amount of organic matter for over 30 years, but you will start to build organic matter pretty quickly if you stop tilling, especially stop that disturbance. One thing I bet Kyle can provide insight on is how to manage a prairie strip in an area where you do maybe need to use a pesticide because it's a perennial crop, blueberries.
Well, right now we're applying organic products that are out there. Where we're going to be at, I don't think we're going to have too much of an issue. Most of my strips also are designed on the northern side of my farm, so they also have maximum sunlight based on how the farm is situated, but also that's the border where my pond is. So I also have all my strips to prevent any runoff and wind and all that jazz. One thing I do want to take into consideration is that when I do put them out there, whatever I put, I want to stop blooming, or at least to have a pause while I have blossoms on the blueberries, because that's kind of the whole point of it. So they attract all the pollinators, and then now that I got them there, and they're like, hey, it's a cool spot. All right, then now go get my blueberries and stop going to the pollinators. So probably try to have something that has a pause during that blossom time of, May to June, July area.
Oh, great. Yeah, that was my next question for all of you, is like, what are maybe some concerns or hesitations you might have about prairie strips, or even like Mike, who's been doing it for a while, have you observed anything negative or positive about the strip so far? And then we'll ask everybody.
I don't really have anything negative. I just have seen I've seen benefits of putting in multiple practices. Like I said, I got the wind erosion strip right next to it. A lot of your pollinators, your butterflies and that stuff, they need a place to rest, and somewhere where you can stop the wind. And so with the trees in there, that actually has increased the beneficials that are out there. And to me, I grow heirloom dry beans. The heirloom dry beans and the pastures that I have, the prairie strips for me are not a big deal anymore because we have that diversity out there. I've got 20-acre fields that have more flowers in them than what the little prairie strip does, but the prairie strips look really pretty because they got more color in them.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
I just, like I said, started those 4 small little plots a couple of years ago, and literature says to mow them twice the first year and probably once the second year, and it's more to keep the weeds that are going to be in those plots down from overtaking your flowers. And you're supposed to mow them high, so you got to do that with a woods mower on a 3-point up high, and it's not a big deal, but and Mike can say more about that, but after the 3rd or 4th year, there's pretty minimal maintenance.
Okay, great. We still have some more time, so I also wanted to ask if the audience had any questions, and I apologize to that side of the room that I can't see it all, so I'm going to stand up now just to make sure I can see everybody. Does anyone have a question? Yep. Mike, have you done any burns to yours?
No, I have a neighbor that likes to do controlled burns, but he's doing more prairie stuff than what I am. Sometimes some of those, and he's doing it for the grasses that are growing out there, not so much for the pollinators, and the flower end of it. The grasses take a little bit more control. They like to burn. They like to have that heat to actually get those seeds to regerminate.
So you've done no burns. Do you mow them ever, or what do you do?
I haven't mowed. In fact, these strips, a number of years back, my daughter decided she wanted horses, and she's been gone now she's been off the farm for 8 years. We grazed horses in there for a number of, a little while. That didn't even hurt those things. Those areas are pretty resilient if you don't beat them up with, the chemicals and even fertilizers. They're really hard on our soils. That's what I'm learning by having these prairie strips and these filter strips. You can actually see what some of these chemicals are actually doing to our soils.
Are either of you considering burning, or are you planning on mowing as a maintenance, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't suspect that you need to burn until year 4 or 5 at the earliest. So, and I'm not sure that I want to do that with where my strips are going to be next to a wooded area.
Yeah, we don't have any plans to do any burning, and mine are all going to be in the middle of my blueberry fields. So,
Yeah, and we will. I think we're going to go out and monitor these strips every year. At least the ones that we're helping to put in. Kathryn and her lab goes out and measures soil health metrics in the fields. Maybe not every year for each one, but to get that time series that we're looking for. And so you can always reach out to us and say, like, it looks like the grasses are taking over. It looks like something's happening, and we'll come, consult with you and help connect you to somebody who knows the right thing. Like, we have one farmer who put them in maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and she was just getting really bad germination. I think it was a weird year and time, or like the timing of when she put the seeds down wasn't very good. So we got her a little more seed to overseed the strip now that just was like not very diverse, not coming in. So we'll be there to troubleshoot it with you. We're just learning as well. All right, any other audience questions? Oh, yeah. In the blue, sorry, that's who I saw first. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. Yes, okay, so the question was, how do we do our seed mixes? Do we customize it for the soil type, and where do we get our seeds from? And so at least for us, the MiSTRIPS program, we're collaborating with Native Connections, which is a grower in Michigan who grows local genotypes, even of species that are native to Michigan. So as local as we can get. There is, like you might have heard, that it's like hard to get local seed or native seed at this point, and so there's definitely going to be a push to maybe more farmers could be growing native seeds to help with prairie restorations. We've heard that coming up, but so far no trouble getting those seeds for people. And then do you all want to talk about if we worked with you at all on the seed mix that you're using, or how you decided on the seed mix that you used?
I'm still figuring that out, so my answer is real easy. I don't know yet.
So I got connected with Liz when I had my soil sampled, and so she had that, and the lady who came out and took the soil samples to give a good approximation of what my soil was like, so that they could make the seed mix appropriate for my soil type.
Back 20 years ago, I was counting on MSU to help me a little bit there. But the last time we did the pollinator, I did my pollinator plot. The conservation district, I actually had a MEP technician. The MEP technician was actually my daughter, but she worked with the conservation district. She had a good resource. She's excellent at what she does, so she kind of put it together for me. So I had a little bit of in, but I would highly recommend getting to your conservation district. Liz is a good, and Kathryn, you're great resources for those things. Even NRCS, working with them, sometimes they are a little bit stuck on programs without the flexibility for the diversity that we need sometimes in what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll just add that, so in the Kalamazoo area, Native Connections is the company we work with, but here in Ottawa County, there are certainly other native seed growers that might be closer to home. And yeah, we or the Ottawa Conservation District can help you locate those companies. But they know all of this information as well. So we're actually working with them and with a site that's near Athens that's really, really sandy, and not everything's going to grow in that. It's mostly glacial till. So choosing a seed mix that's going to survive and do well in a very sandy soil is something that we are working on. Yeah.
Also, to make it a little easier, we have what we tend to start with is like a base mix that we designed for the Kellogg Biological Station experiments. And so that mix specifically was to like maximize floral diversity, so like something blooming at all times, just like leaf resources and like other resources for beneficial insects to be out at the max time. But I think we've used that exact mix just very rarely, and each farmer has their own goals and conditions and things like that. And so even just like we had a farmer who just loves sunflowers, and the strip is going to be kind of close to their house, and they wanted to see sunflowers. So we like mess with the mix just even to make it like aesthetically pleasing. Or we have some farmers who have farm stands, and so they're planting a little bit of prairie next to the farm stand as well as like further out into the field. We have some people who do like you pick blueberries and want that conservation practice visible for people coming. So you can think of it as like an ecotourism thing too, and these can be really showy and pretty. And so we'll customize to your soil, we'll customize to all the different goals that you've got.
There's even an idea to do a you pick wildflowers, just putting that one out there. So on a blueberry farm. I think that's all the time we have, right? Do we have till 11 or are we done? Oh, we have until 11, okay.
I wanted to give this side of the room a chance. Okay, yep. Okay, so the question was, so you have prairie plantings on your own? Oh, okay, all right, so prairie plantings of solar farms, and it's seen success with winter seeding, putting the seed out in the winter to help with stratification. So for you all, I guess you could talk about what you're planning, and then again, Mike, if you remember like what you did when you put them out. Yeah, when are you planning on that?
I'm not sure. We talked about trying to do it before winter, but here we are in February and it hasn't happened yet. So it's probably going to be a spring thing for us at this point in time.
Yeah, same here. I planted my first ones in the spring, and I was pretty surprised how well they did the first year. So I'm not too concerned about having to plant in the spring. Some of the seeds might not germinate till next spring, but so be it.
Yeah, I planted mine in the spring. It's just when we were able to get that piece ready. The other one, that's a way longer ago than when I remember, but it seems to me it was early spring that we planted that one too.
Yeah, we're just basically writing down what happens for each farm, because again, like you have goals for when you think they're going to go in, and then you have whatever season happens. So this year, I think all of our farmers are putting them in the spring this year because nobody got it done. Like the snow was just really unpredictable this year. Talking to people who just have really good advice about when to do this, winter seeding is really successful. So like basically getting it out right before the first snowfall. So you get it on the ground, the snow comes and covers it up, and then sort of frost works it into the soil over the winter, helps with the cold stratification. But we've seen success with the spring too. So it really is, custom to the year, custom to when you can get out on your field, when the site's prepped, that sort of thing. All right, any other questions? Oh, okay, because yeah. Okay, so the question was, what if you're already starting with a site that's really invaded with something and it would be, hard to remove and invasive? What do you do to prep the site, especially if you don't want to use chemicals to spray and kill that all off? Does anyone have experience with that? We haven't had experience so far. I don't think any of our farmers have done that yet.
Well, the only thing is when you start talking invasive species, sometimes we got to go and look at what's causing those things to grow. A lot of times there's not the correct biology in the soil. Sometimes our fertilizer levels are off. For me, I had extremely high phosphorus levels, but it was not in a form that was plant available. And I had to change that on my whole farm to actually make the whole system work better. And that involves biology, trying to get the biology in your soil system corrected with releasable stuff. I'd recommend Cushman back here, one of our sponsors today. He's got a lot of good stuff that helps us with soil biology, foliar stuff, and that kind of stuff, which is going to start helping to minimize the effects of those invasives in those areas, doing it naturally instead of with chemicals.
Yeah, and I think each context will be specific too. So like if you want like a team to come out and look at the site and talk to you about it, we could do that. Like we've done farm visits where like we will come out, somebody from Extension comes with us, somebody from the Conservation District comes with us, and we could just consult with you and like troubleshoot that specific spot. Because I personally don't have any experience with that yet, but it would be interesting to try to see what we could do.
Yeah, in the absence of using an herbicide, smothering. So it depends on how big the area is, but if you can plant rye and then flatten it, as Rick was talking about, that can often help with causing invasives to no longer be able to do photosynthesis. So if it's not a big area, if it's like a marginal area that you could cover it. So that'll kill everything and heat it up as well. So if you plant seeds right after that, it should be pretty competitive to come in. You may have an invasive species problem that you need to burn for every once in a while. So again, sometimes there's complexities with burning, but especially burning regularly usually keeps invasive species down.
Yeah, at KBS, I know we burn every year our prairie sites, and we have observed like black locust is coming into the plots with the burning. We can't stop the black locust coming in. We don't want woody stuff in there, and so there's been just like site cutting of it and injections of it. So you can do something like a little more targeted than just having to spray the whole thing. But like Prairie's not going to keep out everything. There's some things that are competitive. All right, let me see. Oh, all right, well, now we're at time. So we could keep going until the other group comes back in. Or maybe. Okay, 5 minutes. All right, great. We'll do one last question, and there you go. Okay, so best practices for establishment, after establishment, maintaining them. I will say, first I'm going to ask the farmers like what they're planning, and then we do have like a lot of resources about that. So I think that there's like a lot of details of everything you want to do. So just send me an email and I'll send you all the big extensive list. But maybe Mike, what are you doing to maintain yours all this time?
They're kind of neglected areas, and it works really well. I do know, because I've worked with NRCS and that kind of stuff. Sometimes they have regulations on when you can mow because you have birds that are nesting in those areas, and we don't want to hurt them at that time. So there are some limitations with some of these programs as you put them in as to when you can do some of these control methods.
I would say that I'm not planning on doing a lot of maintenance either. One thing I would mention, I've heard at another conference a couple of weeks ago, is that putting them along the edges of your fields where the deer have their way with your row crops is probably not such a bad idea.
Okay, yeah, so just to say there's a lot of advice out there about how to establish and maintain prairie. Our contact information is all up on that website. send us an email. I'll just send you a million PDFs of advice. We also have, please come take resources up here if you are interested in getting started. We have just like links to some of our favorite resources up here. Our farmers are awesome resources as well. Like not to speak for all of you, but like you guys are the pioneers of this practice for Michigan, and so they're going to be a really important resource for us to figure out those best practices, like what does it look like in all these different scenarios. So I just want to take a moment to thank our farmer panel, and thank you for their expertise. And say thank you to Kathryn, because just like all the on-farm research that her lab does is a really great resource for you as farmers if you're curious about getting some of that data. Like, again, sorry, Rick, I'm going to mention your talk a million times, but like Rick said, like get that data before you start with a conservation practice. Get someone out to your field to measure some soil health stuff to figure out what kind of mix works best for you. Like Kathryn's lab has just been really generous in their time going out to farms and doing a lot of this on-farm work. So thanks to Kathryn. And thank you all for your time. And if you are interested, please see us, because we are happy to come visit you.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Liz, and for all the organization you do for MiSTRIPS. And also thank you again to Ottawa County Conservation District for having us here. It's been great, and we'd love to talk with you. Please come and take resources. They're up here on the edge of the stage during the break. Come and chat with us. We're happy to answer any more questions. Thanks.